is the Latin Mass going to be banned? There are rumors of war against the traditional Latin Mass. And not helping the cause is these keyboard warriors that are trying to spread the truth with clarity, but they lack charity. We're going to talk about this and many other things with Eric Sammons with Crisis Magazine coming up in just a second. You won't want to miss this interview, so stay tuned with Eric Sammons with Crisis Magazine coming up right now.
Joining us right now by Zoom chat is Eric Sammons. He is the editor-in-chief of Crisis Magazine, crisismagazine.com. Good morning to you, Eric.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Praise be to God, I'm alive. And that counts.
There we go.
That counts.
There we go.
That counts. It's good to have you back. It's good to hear your voice again. I heard you were sick recently. Everything okay?
Yeah, I'm recovering. I'm about 95% at this point. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it's all good.
Was it serious?
No, I mean, it was just one of those things that wouldn't go away.
Got it. Yeah. Well, praise be to God, you're here and everything's good. There's at least two stories I'd love to chat with you about while we have you on. One is the traditional Latin Mass. We've been hearing rumors and allegations that the Vatican is about to suppress or revise or do away with the Summorum Pontificum. And so people are starting to talk about this more and more. Some journalists who have great resources inside the Vatican have said that they've confirmed that these rumors are true. But I think one of the big telling things for me was just, I think today, as a matter of fact, Cardinal Zen has come out with a public statement basically addressing these rumors as well, citing his own experience as the bishop in Hong Kong, saying that thanks to the Summorum Pontificum, the faithful have enjoyed the traditional Latin Mass there, and they've never been divisive. It's been a wonderful resource for the young especially. And that's kind of the heart of the matter that I want to get to you with, Eric, in your article on Crisis Magazine on this. So many young families, young people are flocking to the traditional form of the Mass. Why would the Vatican want to stymie that?
It really is the question, because it's this weird dichotomy where most of us, in America at least, our experience of the traditional Latin Mass in our diocese it's usually one or two parishes have it. And if you go to it, you will notice it's just flooded with young families. I mean, that's the primary demographic of the traditional Latin Mass. And when you go to a lot of your typical St. Suburbia parishes, you don't see young families anywhere. And so obviously you see there's energy here at this traditional Latin Mass. This is where the young are flocking to. And yet at the same time, we hear these comments from the Vatican, from rumors and everything, that there's this danger to the traditional Latin Mass, that we need to do something to kind of keep it in check. And I'm kind of like, why would you want to keep the one thing that's going well for the Catholic Church, at least in the Western world? Why would you want to keep that in check? Let that Holy Spirit out,
right?
and let it make it free in the traditional Latin Mass, because this is clearly where he is leading at least a good segment of the Catholic population is to the traditional Latin Mass and to traditional forms of piety and theology and doctrine and all that. And so it just seems to me that if I was like I mentioned in the article, if I'm running a company and I have one division, and all my divisions are doing terribly, except for this one small division that nobody really pays attention to, but yet it's growing by leaps and bounds. What I'm doing is I'm bringing all the managers in. I'm saying, okay, what are these people doing right? And let's imitate that and figure out what they're doing. Maybe we don't know what they're doing right. That's fine. Yeah. But you learn from it. You talk to them. You say, okay, what are you doing? And then you build upon that in the other divisions of the church.
Now imagine you're the editor in chief of Crisis Magazine. Imagine if I came to you and I said, okay, Eric, you've been editor in chief now for a while. Over the past 50 years, your magazine has declined tremendously in major areas, major categories. It seems to be failing across the board in every single category according to the data and the statistics. What would you, as the editor-in-chief, do about that? You would make changes, would you not? You would do something to correct that. And yet within the Catholic Church, we have the data. Cara holds this data. It's on Georgetown's website. You can Google it and see it for yourself. And over the past 50 years, religious vocations, priestly vocations, parish doors shuttering, sacramental baptisms, and marriages all down, Catholic schools shutting down, every category down for the past 50 years. And here is this revival among traditional Catholics and people flocking to traditional Catholicism, why would anyone want to stymie that? It just boggles the mind. And yet there must be a reason.
Yeah, there obviously is a reason. And one of the most frustrating things I've found in my work in the church, I used to be a diocesan director of evangelization, worked at the parish level as well. And what I've seen is that there's this refusal to see reality. As you said, the numbers are just screaming at us that we're in decline, that the Catholic Church in America, and that's what I'm primarily talking about, because I think the Western world is probably the same, but that's what we have our experience in, is just in this terrible decline. Yet you go to your typical parish or diocese and they talk about how vibrant and how live they are and things like that. Yet all around us, people are leaving. Now, the question is, why are people, obviously people high up at the Vatican, in different chanceries, why are they against the traditional Latin Mass? Why do they not want to learn from it? I do think it's ideological. I think they understand, and they even admit this, if you look at what they say about that, the traditional Latin Mass is more than just about the Mass. It really is a different way to practice Catholicism. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that the ordinary form is invalid or anything like that. I'm just simply saying that once you start going to traditional Latin Mass, I found this myself when I started going 10 years ago, you start to just see things differently. Yeah. You see the faith differently. You see the reality of the sacramental life differently. You start to get more into traditional forms of piety, the writings and lives of the saints you see differently. And I think all of this really does make a difference and I think they know that. I think people who are opposed to these traditional forms of piety, traditional forms of spirituality, traditional forms of looking at doctrine and things like that, I think they know that. I think they know that if you attend the traditional Latin Mass for a while, you start to change how you look at things. And so, to be blunt, it makes the whole house of cards fall apart.
The toxic online culture of rad trads and everybody else practically who's Catholic and online. You just put out an article on this. What's going on there, Eric?
It's something that I've noticed for years. I've been involved in online the Catholic online world, I guess you'd say, for over 20 years now, which just it kind of sounds sad when I say it like that.
You're old. Just admit it.
Exactly.
It's okay.
That's right. Exactly. I'll lean into that.
I'm told I'm old every day by my team here, Catholic Drive.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly.
Welcome to the club.
That's right. But I've noticed that it just seems that there's always the constant complaint of toxicity among Catholics, and particularly traditionalists get this thrown at them more than others. And I'm not going to say it's not deserved at times. I think it is deserved, definitely at times. I've seen it myself. And however, I would broaden it. I would say I just see it everywhere because I've been involved in other online communities, different interests I've had and things like that. And you always have a segment in every one of them that is toxic, that just takes over and becomes just dominant, and they just are terrible in the way they act on the internet. And unfortunately, you would hope that wouldn't be true in Catholic communities, but it is. And some of it has to do just to simply fact that, a traditionalist is usually going to be somebody who's more just very strong in their opinions. And the reason they kind of chose a different way is because of that. And so they're going to express that. But I do think there's a couple big reasons for that. And I think one does have to do with the fact that I do believe the bishops have failed in many ways in their duty to promote and defend and teach the Catholic faith. And so the laity have really felt the need to step up and to do it. In a lot of cases, that's awesome. I mean, look at a Scott Hahn or a Janet Smith. I mean, that's just great. We love it because they do a great job. But it also means that everybody with an internet connection feels like they can get on their soapbox and they can tell everybody what is truly Catholic and what isn't. And they can declare people heretics and excommunicate people and things like that. And so that's a real danger. And I feel like if the bishops were consistent in doing a good job of really doing their jobs, then I think there'd be less of that because it'd be very clear to the Catholic, okay, let's just, follow the bishops. They're obviously the ones we should be listening to, but they just haven't done their job. I also do think another reason is it's just the nature of the internet, that the way it's built, it is just built for a more combative environment where you're trying to defeat the other person rather than engage with them. And some mediums are worse than others. Like Twitter is probably the worst. Because of the nature of the short responses, that what happens is people it's a drive-by way of interacting with people. Okay, can I score some points here by a quick little witty, what I think is witty, usually is an retort against somebody, and I score some points, I win this argument in my mind. And really, though, it doesn't foster an engagement between minds of, okay, and it goes beyond that too, because you just see somebody as an avatar, as a name on a screen and maybe a picture. You don't see them as a real human being to engage with. So I think it's a real problem. One thing I've done is, this has been great. Sometimes when somebody will, they write an article critiquing me or something like that, I'll reach out to them. And I've gotten involved in email exchanges with them where they go back and forth. They can be long. They can take, we can take a week before we respond, but that's okay because it doesn't have to be, 2 seconds later, I give my thought of exactly what I think of everything he wrote. It doesn't have to be like that. And so that's kind of what I was writing about, is this danger that we're just trying to attack each other, and it becomes very toxic.
Eric Sammons is our guest. He is the editor-in-chief of Crisis Magazine, and we're talking about the scourge of toxic online Catholicism, which he has an article to that with that headline over on crisismagazine.com. I made a rule a long time ago, because I went through a sort of a phase right after my conversion to the faith, and my giving my fiat to Christ and to His church, that I would defend the church. And so when I remember finishing up my college degree, and I was the only person of faith in the classroom, and it was everybody against me, and boy, it was a slugfest. And I remember those days, and the online culture feels a lot like that. But I also learned a few hard lessons, that I didn't convert anybody. I didn't convince anybody simply because I could browbeat them with Scripture or the early church or what have you. And I made a decision in those days, learning all those lessons the hard way, that if they weren't open for a conversation, then I would not be open for a debate, because It would be fruitless. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can proclaim the faith. We should do that. And obviously at times people will be offended by that. And that's just, sometimes that's their problem and not ours. If we proclaim it charitably and they're still offended, well, we can't do anything about that. But absolutely, you have to understand, if people aren't, our Lord says this Himself when He tells the disciples, if they're not going to listen to you, just wipe the dust off your feet and walk on to the next town. And I feel like we have this, we have to win. We have to make them submission before we will move on. And I have a rule on Twitter where I literally do, if I engage with somebody, I don't go more than 2 responses, and I just quit the discussion, because I found that it always ends up, if you go back and forth over a long period of time, any period of time, it ends up becoming you're attacking each other. You start making attacks on the person and things like that. And I just don't want to get into that. I tried it for so long, and it always ended badly. So, and I just tell people that too, like, okay, I'm done with this discussion. It's not that I'm saying you're right, or I'm not saying that you're wrong even. I'm just saying that I know this isn't going to really bear any fruit. And so it's not worth either of our times.
So what kind of conversations should we be having with people online, or should we just not have conversations online? Because I've seen in my own personal life, being online, really things tend to... This is my experience. My experience is I will comment and I will make a post, and people will be very upset. People will comment and we'll get nowhere. But I will get private messages from other people who were reading the post and reading the comments and back and forth between the comments, and they'll reach out to me and say, "Oh my goodness, I was so thankful that you are defending God and defending Christ. I don't have the bravery to do it myself, but thank you very much." And I get people will say things like, "Oh, I really like the way you responded to X, Y, or Z." And so I think we have lost this sense of we do things sometimes for the sake of the people who are watching, the silent observer. What say you? How do we interact with people and spread the truth on social media platforms?
And that is a great point. I love that, because that is so true, that often we're engaging with somebody, the person we're engaging with might not be listening, but other people are, because it is a public forum. I think the key, though, is to remember that when you're engaging with them, so that you're not trying to go after the person that you're actually directly communicating with, because you know other people are watching. And so you're really talking to the crowd. So even if you know the other person isn't really following, as long as you remain charitable, you remain reasonable, you don't fall into the trap, because that's a great witness too. If they're attacking you personally, but yet you don't fall for that by attacking them back personally, but instead continue to take the high road and talk about the issue that you're talking about, I think that's a great idea. And I think the biggest thing is, know other people are watching, and when they communicate with you privately, you can have a lot more discussions too. And I know, like Austin Rue is one of our writers for Crisis. He does this where he will engage with people who very much do not like him, and he has found much success in having them come along and really come a view and change how they look at things, because he's willing to engage with them. But he tries to do it as charitably as possible always as well.
But there's a bit of a trap there too, in the sense that if you have the time to sit and give those folks that time to be able to engage them back and forth. I've had so many people really just try to eat away at your time by having this toxic conversation that really doesn't bear much fruit. That's part of the reason why I decided, you know what, if that's going to be the case, then I don't have that time to give you, to spend hours of my day going back and forth, provided that we're not going to really have a good dialogue or a conversation. Wouldn't you say that that's also a real concern for a lot of people?
Oh, it's a minefield out there. And I think one of the mines is the sucking up of all your time and energy, because we all have duties and responsibilities, and we can just spend too much time. Like, for example, if you find yourself checking your phone to check your latest Facebook argument you're in, and and your kid is coming up to you and wants to play with you, but you're like more consumed looking at your phone and the Facebook argument, you know you've done something wrong, and you need to take a step back, and you need to be very disciplined. So you spend certain times a day where you will spend time on social media, but they're very limited. You say, okay, at this time of day I will be looking at, but during this time it's off limits. I like, for example, let's say after 6 o'clock in the evening until the kids go to bed at 9 or something like that. Like, I will not get on social media no matter what, because there are more important things I have to do. I have duties to my spouse, to my kids, what have you. I think those are definite dangers. There's so many dangers in the internet, but I think that's one of them, is that we'll just take away from the time to your obligations to more important things like your family.
We are just about down to a minute left with Eric Sammons from Crisis Magazine. Now, you're turning off the comm box on your website, right?
Yes, we are, which was a big decision we've been thinking about for some time. People who manage a website that has a lot of comments know this. It's a lot of work to moderate it, because what happens is people, they see the end result usually, which is a relatively moderated comm box, but there's a lot of work behind that to make that happen. And we just didn't feel, we had a very small percentage of readers, like 1%, who actually commented. And we just didn't feel it was worth the resources we were spending, because of a lot of people would jump on and do toxic things, and we'd have to get rid of them.
All right. That is going to do it. Eric Sammons, editor-in-chief of Crisis Magazine. Thank you for your time and for your input. We're very grateful to you. God bless you and God love you.
If you like that interview, you might like some of our other interviews as well. And make sure to like and subscribe and share this video with those that you think will find this informative, inspiring, or you think it will help them on their faith journey.